Okay, welcome to join today's community meeting. First of all, some overall status update. We have created RT1 for V 1.12.4 and we will GA it today. And for V 1.14, we have finished the first round candidate reviewing, and most of them had been moved to the 1.40 milestone, and there are some leftovers for which are still under the candidate category, which means that we think they have some values, but we are not we they are not prioritized enough, mm, or the efforts are too large. So please review all of them, and if you have different opinions, you can just comment in the issue, and we can review them again.
Just want to note that first one at the top there, I just created that today. So it was probably after your meeting. That's a design only. So the intent is to get the design approved in the 114 timeframe, but not the implementation. So
yeah,
the hope is to get the design done in 114, and then we can start implementation in 115.
Yeah, I think this one is about the concurrency in one job, right?
Yeah, exactly. Basically, this is to enable multi-threaded, like to run one backup, backing up multiple items within that backup at the same time. So the design and the intent is to get that approved in 114, and then we'll start the implementation during the 115 timeframe.
Yeah. Maybe we can discuss this a little bit later.
Give people a chance to read over the idea. I have some more detailed thoughts beyond this that I'm hoping to start getting into a design PR. But this is kind of just a high level summary of kind of the expectation of where this, I think, is going for the design.
Yeah, I'll check more details, Scott. Thanks for that. But reading the title, it seems you try to include two things in one issue.
Well, the reason for that is there's kind of two different things we need. There's a common refactoring. Basically, there's two different like eventual features. The main focus here is being able to do one backup with multiple threads on the controller. To do that, we need to be able to group items that are relevant together, so we, don't so that those related items. So, for example, a pod and its volumes or things like that get backed up in a single thread, not at the same time. Another feature we know we want eventually is to support volume group snapshots. That also needs that same initial refactoring to get these groups of items backed up together. So basically, the refactoring we need to do to back up groups of items together is primarily needed for the multi-threaded backup, but it's also going to be needed to support volume group snapshots eventually as well. So that's why it's kind of relevant, because basically there's a phase one that does that refactoring to do groups of items together, and then the phase two of this actually creates the multiple threads. Out of scope, which I put in the non-goal section, is support volume group snapshots. That's a longer term thing to do later, but it depends on some of the work done here. That's why I mentioned it.
But the whole design will be targeted for that, right? I mean, for group snapshots.
So this design is to enable the refactoring of the backup workflow to get these groups of items together, and to then enable the multi-threaded, like a single backup with multiple threads, so the backup controller can do multiple items at once within a backup. What we're not doing as part of this detailed design is working out all the details of the volume group snapshots, but we do know that item group work we're doing, or item blocks, is a prerequisite for that. So basically that volume group snapshot work will be a future design that's going to be built on top of this. So it's mentioned here because it's kind of a long term. This will enable that to happen, but it's also a non-goal because we're not actually solving that problem here. the full problem. We're just doing some initial refactoring that will enable that, but we also need for the multi-threaded backup.
Sorry, but I don't quite understand if it's a non-goal, why we need to put that in the title. But okay.
The main reason is that refactoring into item groups, like that's why I say volume group snapshot enablement. In other words, this is kind of a step one that the volume group snapshot work needs. We can't do that work without this, but this doesn't solve that problem. So so it's a goal to do that prerequisite work, the early kind of phase one grouping items together, because we need that anyway for the multi-threaded. But it's a non-goal to actually fully build out the feature.
Okay.
It's a
that's relevant
multi-step.
because some of the details around how we group these items together, we need to know that eventually we also need to support volume group snapshots, because that might inform some of the design decisions, because we want to make sure we're not designing this in a way to make that harder. We're designing this in a way to make that easier, but we're not solving the whole problem now. So it's mentioned because it's something we have to keep in mind as we build the design out, to say this also needs to eventually support that. And that might change some of the details or how we do specific steps right now. But we're not actually building all of that out, because that would be a lot more complexity that it's going to delay getting the performance items in place.
Yeah, and this one does not help the multiple backup in parallel, right? So we say
again, this doesn't solve that problem. But once we've done this, once we have the multi-threaded backup that allows us to back up items in parallel, there might be some eventual work in, say, 1.16 or 1.17, I don't know, at some future point, that will be easier to do because we have this, but this doesn't solve the whole problem.
Sorry, I don't understand this part. Why it helps multiple backup? I mean, multiple parallel backup. Because
I think
because the end result of this is we're going to have multiple worker threads in the backup controller that will back up groups of items. Once we eventually want to support doing multiple backups in parallel, those same threads will then be serving items from multiple backups. So this does some of that initial work, which means that eventual 2 backups at a time work will be a smaller implementation task, because the basic building blocks at the controller level of being able to back up multiple items at a time will have already been worked out.
So you mean we have built some infrastructure works, like we have a thread pool and we have a work item, so that this kind of infrastructure item can be used by both the single backup parallel and multiple backup parallel.
Right, because right now, again, we're not doing anything with multiple backups at a time, but the idea being the single backup goes through the list of items, groups it into groups of items, and then dispatches through a channel. Okay, here's a group, here's a group, here's a group. Maybe you have 10 threads accepting those groups in the channel. So you're backing up 10 items at a time. So the eventual follow-on design that says, hey, we want to do 2 backups at once, may end up using those same threads. But now that channel that you're adding items to might have groups from different backups.
Yeah,
we don't need to solve that problem now. What I'm saying is that once this is implemented, that becomes an easier problem to solve. But we're not solving that problem now.
Yeah, so I think the answer is, it sounds like that the solution for this issue may help parallel backup, but we need to see, I think.
Yeah, exactly. In other words, again, the hope is that what we do here makes that work easier, but that's not the primary goal. The primary goal is to be able to take a single backup that has a whole bunch of items, and say you got 30 pods and each pod has 5 volumes. We can back up several of those at a time within a backup. That's what we're really focusing on here.
Then what about we add some clarification in the goal, something
But
about
it's put in the non-goal.
Yeah,
So
I mean,
I think we need to take a step back. This is not a design. Scott is yet to propose a design.
This
Yeah,
is just
yeah.
an abstract.
I've
Yeah.
This is just the GitHub issue. It does
Yeah.
follow the design doc format because I started going through the high level. We're going to actually create a design PR with this content plus the detailed design that follows, which talks about what kind of backup item action API changes are needed to do this, how we're going to do the thread pools, all of that. That's where we can have kind of a little more detailed discussion. I guess the point here is really just, hey, here's something that I'd like to at least get designed in the time frame for 114. I realize that it's too late to do any implementation in 114. That's fine. The hope is to get the design in 114 and then I identify probably 2 phases of development. One which would do that refactoring of item groups, and the second one which would then actually make the threads. And those might be in 2 different Velero versions, maybe 115 and 116. They might fit in one. Again, those are things we can work out once we have an approved design.
Yeah.
This more signals our intentions.
Yeah.
And the non-goals are important here because, again, there are things that we're thinking about longer term. There are things that matter longer term, but I don't want to get this implementation bogged down in all those details to have to solve all the problems right now. But I still mention them because I do want to, if we think of something, if we do it this way, this makes it harder to get that goal long-term done. That's a good thing to keep in mind. But that's really the only way it matters. We don't want to actually solve all the problems now. The main goal here is to solve one backup with multiple threads so that we can run a single backup faster.
Right.
Yeah.
And I think that, one of the top issues that Pradeep wanted to attack was, just performance of Velero and backups. So I think this helps push that forward amongst other designs and PRs that we have out there, that is there in the community, but this should help as well.
Okay.
Yeah. So one suggestion I have is that we may need to descope, at least in the designs title. I think we need to make sure like the design to introduce the item block. Then let's put that in the title of the design instead of like talking about volume group snapshot in the design. That will be a little confusing. But I think as for an issues title, that may be okay. Although I still find it a little confusing, but I understand your point, Scott.
Yeah, and the only reason I didn't mention item block in the title was just because item block is really more of an implementation detail than a requirement. It just happens to be an implementation detail that solves 2 different problems. But to your point, we can try to get the design document itself to be a little clearer around that. Keep that in mind when I generate that PR.
Yeah, and from end-to-end scenario, I think the item blocks fix the scenario like we have lots of items to back up in one backup, and this can improve the performance, right? And this can also help some other scenarios like volume group snapshot and maybe the multi backup in parallel.
Right, which is, again, and I call this out as non-goals because we're not going to implement those here, but those are also things that this design will make easier to implement later. That's kind of why they're mentioned in the first place. But I also wanted to make it clear there, and I can rework the title to make it clear too that what we're actually doing here versus what we're not doing here.
Okay. Okay, I think we can continue discuss this offline for this issue, and we can add more comments later. Thanks. And for any other issues in this list, we can add more comments, and we can review and discuss them offline as well. This for the overall status. So I think most of members have started the work for with 1.14. Myself is also working on 1.14 items and created some PRs, and especially I created the design and the implementation PRs for the node selection. So please just review the both and add comment for them. And next one, Daniel, please.
Yeah, just I'm just reviewing some designs for 1.14, and for myself, I'm also working. I mean, fixed a few issues regarding the EKS support and AWS plugin. So thanks.
Yeah, okay. And Scott?
Yeah, that's the one we discussed.
Yeah, okay. Scott, you have any more comments for your items?
No, I think we already kind of discussed that earlier, so I think we'll go to that.
Okay. The next one, Ming, please.
I'm doing the repository maintenance job design and the implementation. Yeah.
Yeah, so
Okay,
I
so
think that one, it would be helpful if someone from Red Hat can take a look at this design. Essentially, we want to launch a Kubernetes job to maintain the CoPR repository. The biggest reason is that we've seen several issues in the customer that when there's a lot of content in the repository, sometimes the Velero pod may consume additional memory, and we want to make sure to separate that job from the Velero pod so that Velero pod won't get, oh, I'm killed anyway, with the current limitation of resource in the pod spec. So could Shubham or Scott also take a look at the design to understand what we are doing now? Because I think
sure thing, Daniel.
Yeah. Thank you.
Yeah, I will go through the design later.
okay. Okay, then Xin, please.
I'm working on only restore volume data's design. That's all.
Okay, thanks. And Qi, please.
I was working on implementing the restore finalizing controller, and the PR is still under review. So please take a look if you're interested in it. And in addition to that, I fixed several issues with metrics. Yeah.
Okay, thanks. And Evan.
I have added a code admin pipeline in Netley and using ZFS as a local PV, and the PR is merged. That's all.
Okay, thanks. And Wenkai.
I'm working on some reviewing works for the PRs and design. That's all.
Okay, thanks. And Shubham.
I updated the extension of volume policy design with some non-goals and future scope. I was also working on a bug regarding CSI plugin, and I think we agreed on adding some controller changes to have an error timeout. So we'll work on those changes in the coming week. That's it.
Okay, thanks. And Tiger, please.
Yes, I'm working to update the delete and recreate option. Hopefully you'll have some more updates for you guys to review this week. And then I was looking through the next one, the download server. There was a comment, basically Sean wanted to come to the meeting, so I have to sync with him, see if he's gonna join. I think that's the last thing we were stuck on.
Okay.
But that one, do you think you want to implement or make that one merge in 1.14 timeframe?
No, not implement. This download one's definitely not implement.
Okay.
Just design.
Okay.
Yep, and that's it.
Okay, thanks. That's for the status update and discussion topics. I have one for actually we have discussed this a little bit previously, and after some investigation. First of all, for the background, like we see quite some users complain that their Velero pod or Node Agent pod just OM killed because of the memory limit during the 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 task during doing the task related to the data moment, like the backup, data moment backup or file system backup restore and repository maintenance. So I think it's time to increase. So the very original idea is to increase the memory limit, but after we've done some investigation, we found that it is not. First of all, it's hard to decide what the limit is, because we all know that the factors to impact the resource usage of the data moment task the factors are very diverse. So so one user's the resource requirement in one user environment may be very different from another one. So, and also if we set a very large limit, so Kubernetes have behavior like it will compare the claimed requirement against the resource the resource that every node has. If the node has less limit than the required one or claimed one, the pod will not be able to be scheduled in that node. So totally so if we consider all these factors, we think the best way is to remove all the limit and the requests, because we have requests. So from the Kubernetes concept, we have the request, we will have the limit, and vice versa. So if we remove the request and limit for the QoS, I mean the overall QoS for from the Kubernetes concept will be best effort. There is a introduction of this best effort. So I'm not sure if we have any concern about we remove all the limit and request. I mean both the limit and request. I just pointed out here for this issue, and I'm not sure if we have some quick points or quick idea for this in the current meeting. If not, we can think about this or discuss it offline and add a comment to this issue. And so
I think it's okay to remove the limits, right? I think at ODP side we decided to remove them, if I recall correctly, like 2-3 releases before. So won't be a bad idea.
Okay, thanks.
So you're saying that the OATP user or customer has been using Node Agent without the resource request?
It's the default configuration, but you can always set them, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
the default one is with no limit and request.
Yeah.
Okay.
The one time the no limit would not work, so you would need to set them, would be if you have quotas set, for example, on the namespace, then you're going to have have resources defined. But if you don't have those resource quotas, then that should be fine. So you definitely need a way of setting them, even if you make them no limit by default.
Yep.
You just mentioned what setting in the namespace. Sorry, could you repeat?
Oh, if you have resource quotas set on your
quota.
namespace.
Okay, yeah.
Yeah. If with resource quota set, the issue then is you won't be able to schedule items that don't define resource limits.
Yeah, and one more question is like since we have by default, YDP has set no limit. So and you also mentioned that when in some user environments they will require a quota, so they will need to set that requirement as set that limit. So while user, I mean the customer, ask for ask the question like what kind of or how much limit have they set, or what exact limit have they set, kind of question.
Yeah,
Have
I'm
you
not
ever?
sure off the top of my head what guidance we provide. I don't know if Shubham or Wes, if you know that. For users that do need to set limits, do we have guidance in our docs for what we recommend?
I don't think
Yeah,
that's
I'm not sure.
published publicly.
Yeah.
I could look through our performance reports for 1.2 and 1.3, but I don't think they're there, to be honest, Scott.
Looking.
Yeah, I think we like on a case by case, if they have an issue, we can look up our performance testing.
Well, we do have something here. So for I think CPU, if it's CSI, it's 200 M and limit is 1000 M. I can share the link.
Okay, thanks.
Public docs. Do you want me to add it to the HackMD?
Yeah, that will be helpful. Please.
We do it for Velero part, not for Node agent though.
Oh yeah. So node agent will still don't have no guidance for user. So
Yeah.
user need to set them according to their own environment, right?
We do have some recommendations at the end. You can check. Yeah, here. And above that, there is a table for Velero.
Scroll up a little bit.
Okay. This one?
Yep.
Okay, we actually, it looks like we have that a large memory limit, right? Here.
Yes. Yeah, 40 gigabytes.
But if we set the request at 16 GB, so it means if a node has no memory, that is largely
No, so
enough for.
that is only for the case when you're using large usage. If you check the large usage node, right, the PV size is 500 gigs and stuff like that. So it's all from the performance and scale testing.
Oh, okay, got that.
But then even for average usage, if you look at the column on the left, the memory request is also 16.
Oh.
I see. But I think that's helpful information, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, because I think in our product, the request is relatively low, and we are discussing with them about this.
Yeah.
So Shubham, so in your you have a scale testing team to do the testing and publish or provide such suggestion to the user, right?
Yep. We don't do it. Yeah. There's a specific team that does the performance and scale. That's correct.
Okay. Anyway, so the background is like for the repository and especially for the file system backup method, it's really need to take quite a lot of memory. It's a memory in quite some scenarios, and that is not a bug. That is natural. So we are thinking about how to handle this kind of scenarios, like actually not so much for changing the code, but to deliver the information to users. So we are thinking about maybe we can discuss the later for more detail.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Thanks for this helpful doc as well. Okay, the next one is
Yeah.
for this design, right?
Yeah, so the next one, I just want to quick check the status, but I see Shubham has made a recent update today. So Shubham, you think you have resolved all the comments, right?
Yeah, hopefully. I think the last conversation I have is that's going on with Lyndon. So I think Scott responded and then I updated the design. So maybe if you guys could provide some
Yeah.
feedback to them. Yeah.
Yeah, we can take another look. So hopefully we can merge this one. Again, I think this one is the anchor feature. Yeah,
Yeah.
we should try to
Yeah.
have that
And I think
delivered.
it sounds like the last kind of few comments back and forth had more to do with things that we might want to talk about then in the design. You know, most of this is being implemented now, but there are a couple of things that we were saying are out of scope now, but we can go ahead and talk in the design about how we would implement those in a phase 2. So I think that was my impression seeing the recent comments at least.
Okay, so for this comment, I mean the last comment. So let me try to understand. So for the first phase, we only support the file system backup and the native snapshot, right?
No, I think we do not differentiate CSI snapshot.
Right.
And
Yep.
native snapshot.
So the snapshot action is very similar to what we do with the in the current legacy approach with like so for example, if we don't default to FS backup and we do snapshots for everything, then whether we use native snapshots or CSI, that's Velero makes that decision based on, is it a CSI volume, is
Yeah.
CSI enabled, that
Right.
kind of thing. So
Similar to what
this
when you said
snapshot action would follow that same kind of logic of whether it's native snapshot or CSI is determined by Velero.
Okay,
Basically,
so
when you
yeah.
say snapshot volumes on backup CR today,
Mm.
you don't specify it's a native snapshot or CSI, but both are supported, right? So similarly, we
Yeah.
won't be providing granular actions right now, but you can always extend these actions later. Another point of note is, I think we are planning to move CSI plugin to Velero main code flow, right? If I'm not wrong.
Yeah.
Yeah. So if
Yeah.
we once do that, right? If we do that, after that, implementing those actions would be easier. That's my take, at least.
Yeah. So right now we have a snapshot action that just lets Velero decide between CSI or native and data mover and all that. But we could enhance this as a future feature later to say, instead of the generic snapshot option, which lets Velero figure out those details, the user could specifically say, snapshot native, which would mean just volume snapshotter, and we would do nothing if only CSI was available. Or snapshot CSI would be saying, no, I want to use CSI only, not native snapshots, not data mover. And then you would have a snapshot data, move data option, which would say, for this volume, I also want to use data mover. And if you added that, that would also let you mix data movement versus CSI only in the same backup. Because right now in Velero, that's on a per backup basis. You're either using data mover for every CSI snapshot or for none of them. So a more granular action of data mover versus CSI in the future would allow that kind of decision to be made on a per volume basis, not just a per backup basis. But
Also,
I
it
think
would
in
make
terms of
sense
the
to
114 implementation, we're
Yeah.
saying we're not doing that more granular. Well, we're just making that higher level decision of snapshot versus FS backup. And if you say a snapshot, it's up to Velero to decide, is this going to be a native volume snapshot, or is this CSI, or is this CSI plus data movement?
And I think it will be less complicated for the user as well once we deprecate opt-in, opt-out legacy and then go towards these options.
Okay, I think that is fine. But regarding the implementation for the CSS snapshot, I have some comments. I have some similar comments like here. We have mentioned that when we encounter a persist volume as an item, actually for the CSS snapshot, the item should be the persist volume claim, right? And also it's not to modify the take PV snapshot function, but to modify the CSS plugin. And also here, we need to modify. Here I just read a question like how do we modify the CSS plugin? are we going to do it and change the code in CSI plugin or what else? So I think we need to clarify this similar. First of all, we need to include the CSI case and clarify how do we do that for the CSI case. I think that is about these 3 comments.
You mean you want me to add how the code works today for CSI plugin in the design?
Yeah, actually, because here we have mentioned how do we apply the implement the code for the native snapshot, because here we say when we encounter a particular volume, but for the CSI snapshot,
But I have added that because after that step in the design, we are processing volume policy in that code flow. For CSI snapshot, we are not processing volume policy. That's the non-goal for the design.
But if the
we are not processing it, but we need to make sure the functionality is what we expected.
Yeah, I think the question had to do with the fact that if the snapshot policy is also triggering CSI plugin, CSI snapshots in the case for volumes that match CSI, the design should be explicit enough about how the CSI plugin gets that information about volume policy, I think is what the comments here are saying.
Oh, so the volume policy will be processed in the CSI plugin, right? If that's the case.
Yeah, well, I mean, wherever it's processed, the point is right now the CSI plugin has to make a decision as to, oh, is this a volume that I'm doing a CSI snapshot of or not? So the volume policy needs to somehow make its way into that in the same way that opt-in, opt-out does now, so that the CSI plugin makes the right decision and doesn't snapshot an item that's either supposed to be, that's supposed to be FS backup, for example.
Okay, I get it. I can add that.
Yeah, I think basically there's no problem. We just need to clarify how do we do that for CSI plugin, and so that there is no confusing information like it looks like we have only handled the volume snapshot case, like native snapshot.
Right.
Okay. Yeah, and that's definitely not the goal. The intent is definitely to handle this for CSI as well. So we need to make sure that's clear. Because I think I know on our side, I think one of the primary use cases for this volume policy is to allow users to choose between data movement and file system backup based on volume types. Because if you're using a mixture of CSI and non-CSI, you can't use data mover for all of it. And so we have users that don't want to have to annotate volumes to make those decisions, which is kind of driving this on our side. So because of that, I'd say for us on the OADP side, supporting this for CSI and data movement is absolutely crucial. So we just need to make sure it's clear enough in the design that that's in scope.
Okay. Okay, so Shubham, please just modify the PR.
I'll add another section, subsection regarding CSI snapshot in the snapshot section.
Okay, thanks. And then I think we can process the review PR and merge it.
Thank you.
Just a quick, two quick comments. Sorry, first, I think what Shubham need to do is just make some modification in place, in line with this, right? Like, in addition to mention the take PV snapshot, the function, there is another way to check the content in the policy in the backup controller when the backup controller is triggering the CSI plugin for the PVC, right?
Yeah. There is a execute actions function, I think.
That takes that are 2 ways. But if we check inside the backup controller, actually in the current code we don't explicitly distinguish or tell whether that is a CSI CSI plugin backup item action or not. So if we do that, we will need to, how to say, we need to make that check in the backup controller. Not sure if that is a good behavior or not.
But if you don't do that, how do we pass the content?
Yeah, that's a question. That's a question because if we do that in the CSI plugin, we need to pass all the information. I mean, this policy information to the CSI plugin. That's a question. If we do that in the controller, as I just mentioned here, it may not be a good behavior because, as I just mentioned, we need to examine that.
Yeah, I mean, I would look at how the CSI plugin is doing this right now, because even right now, the CSI plugin has to decide, what, when we get to a PVC, oh, is this the PVC that CSI is working on? So we need to create the volume snapshot, or is this a PVC that's, file system backup, or is this the PVC that the volume snapshot is working on? So the CSI plugin is already making that decision based on some information. I guess this design just needs to determine how that process needs to be modified. Now that we're doing volume policies.
Yeah, Adam, I think it is calling Velero API. Like to tell what how many what are the pod what are the volumes that's handled by the pod volume backup. It is directly calling the Velero API. Yeah.
So, and it may be that Velero API would take into account volume. I mean, that's where again the details come into play. That I think Shubham's got a better handle on than I do. But that's kind of the level of detail I think that we're talking about here when we're saying how does the plugin know what to do.
So that's a tricky part to please double check the code flow and clarify that in the design.
And that's again where this first phase where we're just doing snapshot versus FS backup kind of follows a similar model, so it would be relatively straightforward. But once we move to this more granular approach, we're saying is a non-goal for this phase, but we'd like to do eventually, that becomes more complicated.
What do we plan to do eventually? Sorry, Scott.
Oh, there was a comment about being able to specify separate policies for I want to use native snapshot or for this volume, or I want a policy for CSI snapshot, I want a policy for data movement. So this would allow you to, for example, I want to use data mover for these volumes, but just CSI for those, which we can't do right now without this, and we can't do based on what we're designing here. But that might be an eventual use of volume policies later to be able to make those kinds of decisions more granular than just FS backup versus snapshotting.
Yeah, to do that, I think we need to unify the native snapshot and CSI snapshot in one place. But that I don't have a idea like how to do that right now, because
that's part of why we're calling that out, saying we'd like to do this eventually, but that's out of scope for this because that's more fundamental API changes and reorganization. I mean, I think we would eventually want that because I can imagine users saying, oh, I want to use data mover for these volumes, but I just want to do CSI snapshot for those. Right now, you can't do that in Velero at all because snapshot move data is a Boolean per backup.
But in terms of CSI versus native snapshot, I believe we are gradually moving towards CSI only. Probably someday CSI only is good enough for most users, right?
Yeah, that is, I think it's definitely native snapshot is becoming less relevant. I don't know if we ever are able to totally remove it, but so right now the Velero approach is if you enable CSI and this is a CSI volume, then we use that. We don't use native snapshotter. So again, that's why I think for this phase we're not making a separate policy for native snapshot versus CSI snapshot. We're just saying snapshot, and we're letting Velero make that decision, just like it does today. With opt-in, opt-out.
I think the only thing here we are missing right now in the design is for which PVC should we trigger the CSI snapshot, right? That's
and some detail around how that gets communicated to the CSI plugin.
Yeah, that's a really tricky part.
Yeah. So I was thinking of two things, but I'll look at the code flow once again and update you guys.
Okay, thanks. So the next one is about the repo maintenance. So you need to share your screen also.
Yeah.
Okay, I'll stop sharing.
That is the proposal for the repository maintenance job. As we know that Velero perform periodic maintenance for each repo, and this operation may sometimes cause a lot of CPU and memories, and which will lead to some custom issues that that Velero server being killed by Kubernetes for auto memory. So we want to decouple repository maintenance from Velero server and by launching an independent maintenance job when needed. And our goal is first, we want the independent repository maintenance, and second, we want the resource used by the maintenance job could be configurable. And third, no API changes. And currently, we don't concern about the parent maintenance. For this one will increase our complexity of our design work. So we will do it maybe later in the future.
Okay.
Yeah.
So here, just make a comment like the concurrent one is like concurrent maintenance is like if we have multiple reports, the maintenance will be done one by one, right? So the next one have to wait for the first one to complete, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
For the details, first we need to provide a maintenance sub command. It will be like this, and this command is executed in maintenance job, and this command will specify one repository, and Velero will do maintenance for the specified repository.
Sorry, Ming, have you made a latest change about the subcommand?
Yeah, we will discuss that later. Yeah, I've changed
yeah,
it.
because I have a concern. This Velero repo subcommand has been used by the CLI already, I'm afraid.
It is hidden from the CLI and the user could not see it. And
yeah.
also when user uses the command, it has a warning that is for our Velero internal user use.
No, but yeah, I just tried it on my laptop, but there seems there is already a Velero repo get to get the repositories. But that's not the server side command. So you are mixing the server side and the client side in one subcommand. I think that there may be a problem.
Yeah, we can discuss it offline.
So maybe we can just follow the current way that we hide this command from user CLI, but we need to change the name because the client name already have a Velero repo. We just need to change the word of repo or something. Like a repo. I don't know, but we need to change the word so that simply a solution.
Right.
Yeah. I will skip some details. Yes, and second, we want to create a maintenance job by repository manager, and the job YAML would be like below. And we have here is the start command and arguments that we provide. And there are some environment variables and the images and some volume mounts and server count. All of these properties are inherited from the Velero server pod.
Yeah, a quick comment, Ming. I think Wenkai also posted one comment before. It's about the keep latest maintenance job. In argument section, the highlighted area. Yeah, that one should be passed to the Velero server, right? Because here you only run the job. You don't.
Yeah, you're right. It is Velero server side parameter is not in the job. I modify it. Also, we need to configure the resource limitation for the maintenance job. It is passed from the Velero server side. And also, we want to set the number of keeping latest maintenance job for each repository. Also, we should integrate the maintenance options into Velero installation command. Also, we need to provide some maintenance monitoring metrics. And also, we want integrate the maintenance job logs and the CRs into Velero debug command. And the whole process mainly as follows. First, the backup repository controller will check the repository status. If the repository is due, then the controller will call the repository manager to create a maintenance job. And in the maintenance job, it will call the Velero repo maintenance to do the repository maintenance. After the job is finished, the backup controller, repository controller will check the maintenance job status and then update the status of a backup repository CR accordingly. And then we will clean up all the expired maintenance job. That is the main process.
Yeah.
And for the future, we may consider using non-blocking mode and support parallel maintenance and improve the maintenance efficiency. Yeah, that is the whole design.
Yeah. So the
And
biggest point is that when Min talks about maintenance job, it's a Kubernetes job. So that's outside of Velero pod. I think that's the whole point of the design. So hopefully it will give Shubham or someone to review the PR more background. So help you understand and reviewing the PR.
yeah, please comment on this PR.
Yeah.
Is there any other questions?
No, yeah, but Shubham or Scott, please spend some time to check this design, and hopefully we can get this merged like before next week or in 1 or 2 weeks.
Yeah.
Sure thing.
Thank you.
You will listen my sharing.
Okay, thanks. Okay, we have done our topics. Any other things that we have not seen here in the page? Okay, okay, then I think we can finish today's meeting. Thanks for joining. Have a good day and evening. Bye bye.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye bye.